Well, first of all, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on this special fireside chat on a topic that we're all very, very passionate about, people and talent. Before we kick off, we really want to thank everyone in our SOS community and also our clients for your amazing support over the last 12 months. We have been absolutely thrilled to see how well received our on-demand solution has been. And obviously, this is thanks to you all. We never thought a year ago we would build a community of over 250 scale-up operators, place over 35 interim leaders in companies that we also really believe in. So thank you all so much for that. And I think one thing we all want to make sure is that we build an engaged community where we can generally add value. So we really do hope that this fireside chat just that, and hopefully the next one can be in person. So thanks to you again, and special thanks to our panel, Elena, Phill, and Anouk. We are really grateful for your insights. So over to you, James.
Thanks, Marina, and hi everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this rather wet and windy, miserable October day, but we're going to have an awesome chat. I'm very excited for it with three wonderful leaders, Elena, Anouk, and Phill. So thank you again for joining us. We're going to kick off with a bit of backgrounds from you all, just to introduce yourselves to everyone that's watching and just get a little bit of insight into your current roles. So Anouk, can we start with you? Fill us in.
So hi everyone, I'm Anouk. I'm founder and CEO at Unleashed. We work with startups and scaling businesses throughout the UK, Europe, and actually we have clients in South Africa and the US as well now, on all things people and culture. I've been in the people and culture space for years, predominantly in tech businesses, and I founded Unleashed because I saw that as lots of businesses grow, they come into people problems as the more people that they get, and it slows their growth down. And I just thought there had to be a better way for businesses to be able to scale. So I founded Unleashed 4 years ago, and we've worked with circa 100 businesses now in the tech space, and we have an amazing team of 15 people. That's us, me.
Fantastic, thank you. And Elena, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Elena. I'm a partner at Northzone, which is an early stage VC fund backing some of the most exciting startups and scale-ups in Europe and in the US. And my role here is really to focus on talent and portfolio development. So essentially supporting companies in scaling. And before this, I was at Bain Capital, which is a private equity fund in a similar type role. And I started in a startup actually, which is an expert network. And I was there from the 0 to the 150 employee stage. So I experienced some of these growing pains firsthand as well.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And finally, last but not least, Phill, over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Phill Burton and I'm the COO at a company called Bloom & Wild. My background is I was a professional lawyer for some years, got into VC law, and then about 12 years ago decided I did not want to be a lawyer anymore and I wanted to move into startups. And so Bloom & Wild is the third startup I've been involved in. I generally specialize in operations and finance, and all three of the startups I've been involved in are e-commerce startups. And at Bloom & Wild, I manage various functional leaders in our business, including operations, as you would expect, finance, our range and merchandising team, and our customer delight team, which is our equivalent of customer service. But over the years, I've managed lots of other functions across the business, like own the international P&L and done lots of bits and pieces. In terms of like scale, we're a company of about 415 people. We recently went through 2 acquisitions and recently raised our Series D financing. So it gives you an idea of the scale we're currently operating at.
Amazing, thank you very much, Phill. We're going to sort of dig into some of those stories in a bit more detail as we go, but I want to start first with you. And Unleashed strapline is HR is dead, long live people, which I absolutely love. So why don't we start with some basics? What does the people function actually do in scale-ups, and what does a typical day look like for a people leader?
So it's actually quite a big question rather than a basics, I would say. But a great people function, it's supposed to ensure that the business achieves its strategic goals through people and culture and through great leadership. And why we talk about HR being dead is that although there is a place for the transactions that are required, it needs to be adding strategic value. And that whole computer says no, old style, policy is the decision maker, not the people being the decision maker, is very old school these days and doesn't help businesses to grow. So what that means in practice, really, to be strategic, is that a senior people person needs to understand deeply the business, the commercials, the tech goal, and designs a people strategy really central to achieving a company's goals. As far as what a typical day looks like, it can be so varied, and it really depends on the size of the business and the size of the people team as well. But I would expect a senior people person to be very much part of the leadership team, to be making decisions. I'd expect managers across a business to be empowered, to be confident and competent. I would expect workshops and facilitation of discussions around pay philosophies and how can our pay processes help us as a business achieve our goals, because it helps us to attract and retain the people that we want. And it's so varied, but it needs to be strategic and value adding at the core.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I think we've seen the startups and scale-ups that invest earlier in people tend to scale faster and are able to, attract some of the best talent and retain it. And just in terms of the what sort of impact can like a really good functioning people function have as you scale?
Yeah, so there's actually a really good stat around in the UK, typically on average, businesses will bring in a senior people person at around 50 to 75 people in terms of headcount. In the US, that average is actually around 10 people before they're bringing in a senior people person.
Oh, wow.
What has been seen in the US is that there have been a lot of successful businesses have great exits, make lots of money, and put their performance down as a business down to the incredible people they had, the incredible culture, people were high performing and happy, so on and so forth. Whilst in the UK, we're still at the point where we haven't seen that much evidence of that. And we're bringing people and culture people into the business at a point where things need fixing, rather than how can we set up a strong business and establish some really core foundations so that when we get to, and this is what we see happening and saw happening a lot, when we're at seed, we're developing our product. When we're at Series A, we're getting all the people in, we've got some money, we need to get kind of bums on seats to make things, to sell things. And then when it comes to Series B, you've got a whole lot of people, but you've not worked on any retention plans, on any development plans. And all of this then starts kind of evolving into tensions and issues of, my role used to be generalist, I'm now more specialist. Where's my progression? Where's my pay review? My manager's a bit rubbish. You've brought somebody in against me, above me rather. People start to leave. So the idea of scaling successfully is by bringing in a people person in the very early days who can set up those foundations to enable that growth so that founders don't have to turn their heads inwards to fix issues. They can continue to focus on their growth.
Yeah, that's a really, that's so interesting. I think we've definitely seen that with a lot of our clients. Elena, it's great to see more of the family joining this webinar.
That should be over post-pandemic lockdown, but I do have a 6-year-old lurking in the background.
I love it. No, that's what it's all about. I guess following on from what Nick just said there, you're a partner at a VC firm, Northzone. How does your role work with different people functions in scale-ups, and what makes that relationship between the VC and the scale-up functions work, those people and talent functions?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just being a partner as and when, founders and their teams want to reach out to us and get our advice and, sort of access to the network. So specific ways that we can help during the journey is, through our network, making introductions to great talent, recommending search partners like JBM that we've had a lot of experience with and we know can, execute really well on searches, as well as provide introductions to operators who have built and scaled teams before, I can help think through specific functional problems and help mentor some of the leaders in the organization. And, you know, lastly, a lot of it is around the community that we're lucky enough to you know, have access to, and to be able to share either benchmarks or specific resources and best practices, or just bring people together. Sometimes, you know, being the only head of people in a startup can be a very lonely place to be. And just to be able as a VC to facilitate some of these conversations and some of this best practice sharing can be really impactful.
Yeah, I can totally see the value add, and thank you for the JBM shout out. That is much appreciated. I mean, talking of, I mean, we hear it on a daily basis from our sort of startup clients about how people and talent is one of the biggest challenges, whether that's attracting talent or just sort of scaling issues. Phill, I wanted to come to you. What are some of the biggest people and talent challenges that companies face as you scale? And I guess particularly looking at you, given you've been through this hyper growth journey at Bloom & Wild, and what have you done to overcome those sorts of challenges too?
Yeah, definitely. I 100% agree that people and talent challenges are the biggest challenge that any company I've been involved has faced, and I actually don't think that really changes like over time or company life cycle. But they're like also the most interesting challenges and rewarding challenges to face. I guess like a few like particular things that we faced over the years. I think a big one is around trying to maintain your culture, your values, and your hiring bar while you're under pressure to like scale quickly and bring new heads into the business. And I think we've probably like tackled this in a couple of ways, like having a very prescribed like hiring and onboarding process. So like we take this like super seriously, like interview process, and then like if you make it through onboarding process is like a carefully planned machine at our company, and I think that means we can like maintain those like culture and values while getting people through the door. And secondly, I think we've probably compromised on pace of hiring in return for quality of hiring. So I think at times like we've like deliberately like you know, taken a bit longer, and to make sure we get the right people in place. That can in turn lead to more pressures on your existing team. So it's a careful balance about weighing all of these things up. So I think that's a big one. Related, like making sure that you're trying to hire like ahead of the curve, not behind the curve. So I think we've like occasionally made mistakes here where we've realized too late, and then you know you need to hire people in quickly, but at the same time you want to keep your hiring bar high, so you like take a long time over it and you've exacerbated the problem before you know it. So I think always like looking ahead, thinking about which functions in your business are bottlenecks to overall like company performance. Heads up, there will always be a function which is a bottleneck. Don't worry about it. It just changes from time to time. And then think carefully about like which people are not scaling as quickly as the company is scaling. I think having some sort of consistent performance management process is super important, especially like ensuring you eliminate like manager bias as far as possible from these processes. So I think like taking that stuff really seriously. And then I think something we've gone through as a business is I guess like moving from that sort of more archetypal leadership style of like command and control, like especially in the early days when it's sort of myself and Aaron, our CEO, sort of basically like trying to like make as many decisions as possible across like every single function of the business, and moving to more of that servant leadership model, where our role is really like to clearly articulate mission, vision, strategy, planning, etc. And I think sort of getting that right and that being like top of mind is super important as well.
Thanks for so many great insights there, and I'm sure any COOs or people leaders listening into this will relate to a lot of that. And would there be anything that you would add in terms of things that you've seen with your clients, typical daily obstacles that they have to come up against?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all of that, and I think to the point, Phill, that you made on thinking about your hiring in advance. And James, I think you can probably add a lot to this. The market has changed significantly over the last 6 months, and roles are far harder to hire for, and there are far more people leaving businesses as well, because everyone's discovered that they can have, except when it was very, very strict lockdown, a lot more of a life, or a lot more kind of a holistic life, and they want to maintain that right now. They don't want to be going back to what was beforehand. And COVID, although it's been tragic in really so many ways, has really provided also a lot of different kinds of opportunities for people. So now is definitely the time to be thinking seriously in advance of your hiring plans, and not just looking at hiring, but actually what is attracting people and what is making people leave, because that's businesses are feeling the impact massively at the minute. Yeah.
It's such a good point. And I mean, we honestly haven't ever known a market like it. And it's exciting in many ways, but it's also, I think, the companies that are slow to react and aren't putting in place these things now, and are really going to struggle. And I guess it brings us on to like a really important topic here, which I'm sure everyone can relate to, is this war on talent that gets thrown around a lot in the tech ecosystem. And I wanted to come to you around the advice. What advice do you have for companies or hiring managers listening to this that are looking to attract the best, looking to incentivize the best and retain the best talent in their business? Because it is such a competitive market. We're seeing, on a daily basis, the best candidates get multiple offers. There's so much going on at the moment. So we'd love to see what you've seen in your portfolio and what advice you'd have for others listening.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely resonates a lot, and it's something that's top of mind for a lot of our founders. And, I think it's never too early to think about employer branding. And I say that not in sort of the necessarily very marketing PR style way, but really around what Phill was saying earlier, being really clear about your values, the type of people you want to attract, your mission, what you're trying to change, and putting that out there so you can really be chosen as an employer of choice. And this is where actually VCs and other angel investors or people in the ecosystem can be really helpful, because we find that we can just articulate the enthusiasm that we see for some of these really early stage companies, and what they're trying to build and why we find the leadership team to be so special. And that can be a really compelling proposition for a candidate that has multiple offers, including from much more well-known later stage tech companies. So yeah, really utilizing your network, putting your mission and values out there, and being at the same time quite selective, as Phill said, of the type of people that you want to bring in.
Yeah, great advice. I think one of the things that we've also seen increasingly, and I think, and Phill touched on this in terms of changing as you evolve your company, changing as leaders and founders, having to empower your teams. And I think one thing that I've also seen come up a lot is the vulnerability and of leaders is becoming, particularly in lockdown, something that candidates are really attracted to leaders that are human and that are approachable. And that are open to being vulnerable. And that's a theme that's come up a lot. I think another one is around like diversity and inclusion, obviously a huge topic and one that we're pretty passionate about here at JBM. And can I just come to you on that one? Just sort of your take on this and what companies you've seen, how are we doing in that respect? And what are the things that those that are listening in are struggling with this as a topic, what they can do better? Have you got any pointers?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really big topic, and it needs to be non-performative and non-tokenistic in terms of any action that it is taken. So I always believe in thinking about inclusion first and then diversity second, because if you think of quotas and numbers and representation only, what you end up doing is being performative and tokenistic in this space, and you still don't have inclusive practices, so anything that you do then becomes really short-lived. So you need to create a culture that's inclusive, that's considerate, that listens, that takes on others' opinions, and just like Phill said, is kind of based with servant leadership, because other people that know better what they need to do, and as a leader you need to step away from the day-to-day detail. And I agree with the vulnerability piece as well. I was speaking to somebody from Escape the City recently, and there's a white paper coming out. And one of the things, without giving too much away because it's not out yet, one of the things that they've noticed is that there is a massive proportion of people who are looking at roles who are looking very closely at whether businesses are inclusive and whether businesses are diverse. And they're not just looking at the website, they're actively reaching out to people within businesses to find out practices, processes, thoughts, engagement, how people feel in terms of whether or not that they feel they belong. They're looking at Glassdoor reviews. They are also looking at websites. They're looking at LinkedIn posts. They're looking at activity on social media from those businesses, and they're being far more active to discover this. And the stat is 65 to 70% of job searchers, of people who are searching for jobs, which is huge, and rightly so, I believe. But it's a really important thing to be focusing on and taking a hard look at ourselves at.
Absolutely. No, thanks for sharing that. I think it's good. It's top of mind for a lot of people. And yeah, again, if companies aren't taking this seriously, they will just not attract the right caliber of people. Phill, coming to you on attracting and retaining top talent, it's obviously, it can be the real making of and the breaking of a company. You've clearly done it very, very well at Bloom & Wild and continue to scale. So what is the secret to your success there, and what learnings can anyone else listening take from your experience?
Yeah, I think like one huge advantage we have in this respect is we're like a B2C company, and so we have a well-known brand, and that like helps attract talent, both like into the funnel and through the funnel. But we also have like a super purposeful approach as well, and we haven't always had a well-known brand, certainly in the early days. So like we went looking for people is the best way to describe that, and I don't think you can do this in like a variety of ways. Like it can be like community based, so you know our tech team does a lot of work like in the tech community, from like coding lessons to online blogs to demo days, etc. And like we really lent into that stuff when we were wanting to expand our technology team. So you know, going and looking in the places where your candidates are most likely to be. We've done a lot of stuff around employer brand and like participation in events, competitions, organizations. We were in Tech Nations, Upscale, and Future 50 programs. That really helped. You know, we participate in Escape the Cities, top 100 best places to work, and all of that stuff is, it requires effort. It doesn't just like land on your door, and it was very purposeful, and that's all about, I guess, increasing the exposure of our employer brand. I think also that some of the best people that have joined our company have come through like internal referrals. We have like a reward mechanism for that, and that can be like referrals from our employees, from our investors, from other peer companies, and I think we've like lent into that a lot. So like I think there's not one magic solution. It's a combination of lots of activities in terms of attracting. I think once we have the talent in the company, then to retain them, that's probably a bit simpler. It's like give them a great experience. Like first and foremost, give people the opportunity to have an impact in the workplace, which is what most people are looking for. And really like be disciplined that you're giving that to each and every single person that joins your company. We have like a big focus on feedback and personal development, and resulting lots of opportunities to move vertically, laterally, diagonally across our companies. And if you're looking to like for personal progression and development, I think we have a great environment to provide that and take it super seriously. And then also like doing the harder stuff around like continual benchmarking of salaries and benefits, and making sure that like we are an attractive place to work in that respect, and keeping up with like how the market's moving, and also like trying to be a leader in that market in some respects. So yeah, I think like getting people in is like can be quite complicated, but it can be quite simple once you have them there. Like just treat them as you would expect to be treated yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most exasperating things, isn't it? When you spend money and invest tons and tons of time on getting these wonderful people into your company, but then you haven't actually thought ahead about how you can retain them and give them the career that they've been promised. And Elena, would you add anything to that in terms of just things you've seen around attraction or retention of talent that have worked?
Go ahead, Elena.
I fully agree with everything you've said. So there's a couple of things that you mentioned that we hear all the time. I mean, what you mentioned about once you get them in, finding different paths for people to evolve and develop. That's something that we see over and over again. And, you know, not everyone wants to be a manager. There's sometimes this perception that as you scale, the key to success is just managing more and more people, but actually, you know, realizing different people's strengths and creating paths for them that could be, you know, you could be a stellar individual contributor and you can remain in this company for a number of years, can be really, really impactful in retaining some great talent.
Such a good point, and that is so relevant to the recruitment industry. You know, it used to be just that you build, you became a good biller, then you became a manager, and most people that are really, really good at billing, actually, a lot of them don't want to do the management piece, but there was no real route, and that's why, you know, I think recruitment lost a lot of good people back in the day. So that's just really an interesting crossover with the tech world. And it would there's, sorry, you were going to say something as well.
No, that's fine. I mean, I agree with everything that's been said there. Unfortunately, because I like having a bit of a debate, but I can't on these topics. One of the things that I find really important as a business grows is to think very early on, and this goes back to the manager conversation, about how they're developing managers. There's nothing more positively impactful or negatively impactful than a confident and competent, or an unconfident and incompetent manager in a business. Their ability to impact an individual and then a team, and therefore that then spreads, is absolutely huge. And I think we need to be doing far more in the management and leadership development space than we currently are. And it's not about learning how to manage an onboarding process or a performance review process. It's actually about learning how to build and develop high performing teams. And it's a nuance, but it's very different and it's powerful. And that we need to see that more earlier in startups and scale ups that are growing if they want to be really successful.
And does that typically come from external parties like Unleashed, or is that something you work on and you actually invest in terms of hiring talent internally into the people team to focus on that?
There are multiple different ways around going it. Yes, Unleashed does do good leadership development, and I genuinely think it's very good, but I am also very biased. There are lots of other companies that also provide some really good development. The point is that it just needs to be invested in. Life Labs learnings are fantastic for great online short pieces of development for managers as well. And things like how to provide amazing feedback where people are going to actually listen to it and hear it, because they incorporate neuroscience into the way in which it's done, rather than just kind of directly with the remote working piece, how to really manage communication well, how to manage energy well, you know, all of those things which matter so much to people always, but particularly now where they need that individual one-on-one piece. It's no longer about a company, what we should do for everyone, and it's far more now about what do individuals need for them to be able to thrive and for them to be able to be high performing.
Oh, that's great.
Just to like give my view on that, like I completely agree with that. I think there's a bit of a myth, to be honest, that our managers like can be taught how to become like great managers by like osmosis of the people that manage them. So either observing the good or less good traits. I actually think there needs to be way more structure to it than that, and lots of these things need to be taught. We have like external facilitators for management training for anyone that manages in our company, and I think like learning from your manager yourself is like a super important part of it. It's not the only part of it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Phil. Thank you. One of the most common requests we've had from startups for our SOS team has been around consultants that can help with org design projects. Elena, what approach do you recommend when it comes to scaling an org design? Because it's clearly a big topic.
Yeah, it's a very big topic, and we often get asked to, you know, share how other companies do it. And, you know, a lot of VCs have, you know, the path of Spotify from seed to IPO, but actually every organization is different. And I think our advice is, I mean, definitely leverage experts and advisors. I'm sure Unleashed does some really good work on that, but also think about your philosophy first before going into where does everyone sit, what do the names in the boxes look like, etc. So by philosophy, we typically, you know, think about things like communication flow, How do you want all the teams to interact? Do you want tech and product to sit differently? Do you want them to be in tribes? What works best for your culture, for your vision, for what you're trying to create? And then commercially, what makes more sense for your client or who you're interacting with? Do they need one touch point or multiple touch points? So, really typically what we say is try and think about it top down before getting too involved in, okay, this is my current team, where should everyone sit and how should they be organized?
No, thank you for sharing that. Phill, I guess this is something that would come under your remit as well, and you've scaled so fast and acquired businesses along the way. So how do you look at that topic?
I think if you're going to try and attempt to do a one-off exercise of like, what does your org design look for the next 5 years? Like my advice would be that is a failed exercise and you're going to be disappointed. So I think there's a continual iterative approach to org design. Agree that I try and think about it top down rather than bottom up. Like what is the company's mission and therefore its strategy, and how should org design support that is the way to think about it, rather than who do I have in my business right now, and how does that all sort of ladder up to what an org design could look like in a few years' time. Of course, you have to consider the people who are currently in your business and their progression, but I guess my view is that with a hypergrowth company in particular, there are always going to be opportunities to progress vertically and laterally. So to really make sense of your design, I start with sort of strategy first, and how do the people support that strategy?
Awesome, thank you very much. Anouk, I just want to come to you on this, because the people and talent function, I believe, is very much the glue of an organization, and obviously requires lots of different functions collaborating with them. So from all the different companies that you've worked with, what is the best way of ensuring that collaboration happens? And are there any sort of common mistakes that you've seen the business make when it comes to interacting and working with the people and talent function?
There are lots of mistakes. I think the most common mistakes relate to perhaps not involving, at least, well, ideally someone senior in the people team at the figurative and literal table, where the decisions are often being made, but at least having somebody there who is thinking about how do these decisions impact our people and culture, or how can our people and culture impact the decisions that we're making and achieving of those goals. So decision making is really important. So a big mistake is not involving people from a decision making perspective. And also managers going to your people, a bit of a tongue twister, when only when something's wrong and it needs fixing, because it's really hard at that stage to kind of undo some damage. So being involved early. I think it's something that people make as a mistake is actually not integrating themselves as part of the business, but seeing themselves as a support function. And I think that can be really dangerous for a business. I think it's really important that strong people teams are part of the business. They understand all of the goals. They're thinking continuously around how can we ensure that our individuals, for the want of an overused word, thrive, and how can we ensure that they're happy, and how can we ensure that they're high performing so that we can achieve our company goals. And it needs to all be in line. I think that's where the best work is done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something I've seen that links back to that about being a really key strategic thought partner to a founder or a CEO, is that we've seen a lot of people leaders become COOs and
Yes.
in companies in recent times. It seems to be a trend, and that's, I mean, obviously we do a lot of COO search, but it's fantastic and wonderful to see people from people and talent background sort of going through the ranks and pivoting into that sort of role.
I think, sorry, James. So over the last year and a half, I think there has been a real shift in the value that it's understood that senior people can bring into a business, because they can really support strategic attainment of all of your goals, by ensuring that people are well, by ensuring that people are developed, by ensuring that people feel that they're adding meaningful value to the work that they're being done as well. And so we've seen a huge demand and a huge increase for VPs of people and chief people officers across the sectors.
No, that's I've seen that as well. Thank you very much. We're getting towards the end of our question, these questions that we've got, and we do have a Q&A. So anyone that's listening, please pop some questions in the Q&A if you would like to know anything else from the brilliant panel. I don't know if this is an over talked about topic, but future of work has been about the thing that's come up most probably on my radar in the last 18 months. I'd love to know your vision for it. We've seen some of the biggest shifts we've ever seen because of the pandemic, and lots of that has been for the better, I think. But how have you seen companies evolve over the last 2 years, and what's your perspective when it comes to the future of work?
It's really interesting because we did a survey recently in our portfolio, and roughly 10% at the moment are fully remote, 30% are remote first, 50% are flexible, and then the rest, 10%, haven't decided yet. By flexible, it's typically people who have hubs or are sort of 50-50. So yeah, quite a big shift, because when we did this similar type of survey pre-pandemic, 50% were very office-based. So definitely a big shift. To be honest, we haven't seen the shift to fully remote happen as drastically yet in our portfolio, but definitely a very strong majority movement to either remote first or flexibility with an office space to provide that connectivity and social interactions, but a lot of freedom to also work remotely or from anywhere in the world sometimes as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I know Northzone is a lead investor in Hopin, which is one of the most incredible growth stories in the last few years that is fully remote, which I find unbelievable.
Never had an office, which is amazing.
I mean, it's just an incredible story, really. I guess as more businesses do opt for that, and we've gone to a sort of hybrid option, but as companies wrestle with this, what to do. Phill, what's your main advice for people that are navigating that setup, the hybrid or remote setup while scaling their business? Because I guess you'll have had to tackle that, and I'd be particularly interested because I guess as Bloom & Wild, as a D2C company, you'll have those that can be remote, and then you'll have probably those in physical operations or warehouse type roles where they don't really have that option. So how do you look at that as a COO?
Yeah, I think like a couple of high level pieces. I think it's like super early. Like none of us know how this is going to play out. I think we'll look back in like 30 years time, and like you'll be able to see with hindsight, but we're like right at the start of like what the return to like the office may look like or not. So I sort of would urge like keeping as much flexibility as possible until we've gone through more sort of cycles, whether that's like seeing what this winter brings, like how that impacts like people's appetite to return to the office or not, etc. So I think it's just very early doors. Secondly, I personally think the businesses who are going to end up with the right operating model here are the ones who are like employee first rather than employer first. So like see what your employees want to do. I think those businesses that sort of like decide what the policies are with like 5 people in a room, I think like that's going to be tough in the current market environment. So my like high level pieces, like tactically, I think for us we've gone completely flexible. I trust every single person in our business to like do their best work, like agnostic of location, apart from if you happen to be doing a function where like location is intrinsic to your work. And I think like the people where that is like understands that they like need to be at the warehouse to like pack our flowers, and they can't do that from home. And so we've like had no sort of, I guess, pushback from anyone in that regard. I think like a couple of like watch outs. I think we all need to keep a very close eye on the most junior members of our team, particularly like people who have just graduated. Like I remember what it was like going into my first job, and that was like so like difficult and weird and like just so new. And I happened to be in like a building with 1,000 other people doing it. Imagine what that's like from your like living room. So I think we need to like give those people like a ton of support. I think we need to find ways to like retain culture and community and celebrate together. So, you know, we're trying to like bring people physically together, like obviously in a safe way, where we can, and celebrate together. But we've also done like a load of events digitally, which I think have like really helped, especially over the last couple of years. I think managers have got a super important part to play here. I think you like more proactively need to take a pulse check of your team. I used to be able to like do this by sort of walking through the corridors of our office, and that's no longer at all really at my disposal. So, you know, I now do like skip level coffees with like people across our entire organization who ultimately report into me, and try and get a read for how everyone's doing. And I think like, again, being like purposeful and accepting that you have to use a different set of tools and mechanisms to understand how your organization is doing now is a good way of thinking about it.
Thank you. Yeah, tons of great insights in there, and it's kind of a nice segue into our Q&A. We've already had a few great questions coming through. So kind of up to you who wants to go first on these, but or thank you for the question. He's asked, would love to hear anyone with a thesis on how to best drive performance and results in balance with founder employee well-being, which is very topical right now. So anyone wants to have a crack at that one? Anouk, I'll come to you.
I don't mind having a go at it from the reverse. I think we're in great danger if we don't find a way to balance, because founder and employee well-being, if people are not well, then business performance won't exist. So we absolutely need to be investing in wellness. We absolutely need to be investing, and I'm assuming I've understood the question correctly. We absolutely need to be investing in making sure that people take time for themselves. I think if you're in a remote first environment, thinking about how do I as an individual, or how does my team, if I'm a manager, manage their energy? When are they most productive? When are they having their breaks? Are they designing their work for what I like to call burstiness? So that's deep work for a bit, then coming out and being able to connect with other people, then going in and then coming out and connect. So actually, I'm not sure that there's a balance to be made, because I think if you don't invest in wellness, then you're going to suffer from a performance perspective. The companies that are performing the best, attracting people, people doing really well, are ones who are caring for all of the well-being side.
100%. I think there's so much out there now that you can access in terms of tools, and you know, I think it's got to be prioritized from leadership. So yeah, thank you, Anouk. We've got another question here. How do you deal with the situation where the founders or leadership team, mainly focused on increasing ROI, disagree on whether or not it's time for the first people hire? That's a good one. Anyone want to take that?
I mean, our advice as a VC is that it's almost never too early to start having these conversations. We've seen the flip side of it, where it's just really costly to leave it too late, not have anyone think about these topics. And it's really an investment for the future, and something that's going to provide massive leverage for the rest of the leadership team and the founding team. So yeah, even if it seems like adding possibly, you know, layers too early, or a cost from an investor point of view, we're very, very supportive. We view it as a crucial strategic function that, you know, 20, 30 people, you already should be thinking about attracting some really good talents there.
I think also there's many founders, and I completely agree with you, Elena, but many founders belong to founder groups. And I would encourage, if there is some debate around whether a people person can add value in the very early days, that perhaps they collect data and speak to other founders that they know. They reach out to members of the leadership team, reach out to other businesses that they know who do have people teams that they brought in early and ones that don't, so that actually there can be a discussion that has a little bit of data aligned to it as well, rather than just a feeling that we might need somebody. When it comes to fixing, it does become a little bit too late. With the ROI piece, a really good senior people leader will add a lot of value to the business in ROI as well. And it's hard, it can be hard to measure, and often it's seen as a cost because it's not kind of revenue generating initially, but often the pushback can be around, if we can attract better people, if we can attract people faster, if we can retain our people and develop our people, then actually it's definitely worthwhile us investing in people. And if that's backed by data, that can also help.
Yeah, great answer. Thank you. Phill, I'll come to you on this one. How do you think about talent development specifically in the current market environment? It's clearly something that you've invested in at Bloom & Wild, so we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we have like fairly prescriptive growth framework, which is we have like a general company growth framework, and for some functions specific to that function. And so like everyone can access and see what the different levels of seniority we have at the company, and like what traits and values and performance you need to exhibit to be on the trajectory to the next stage. And that document is like referenced like regularly between members of our team and their managers. So I think there's like sort of a high degree of transparency and clarity about like what the various paths like through our company can be. And I think as Elena said earlier, there are also like various ways of doing it. There's like a personal contributor paths, there's management paths, there's like technical expertise paths, etc. So all of this is like fairly mapped out, and there are regular touch points to like discuss this with managers and managees. We also have 6 monthly review cycles, very prescribed process about like how we run those, how we calibrate them to make sure they're fair across the entire organization. So I guess there's a lot of process around this stuff, but it's process for a good reason. It's like some of the most important stuff you will do in your business, and like in other areas you wouldn't just sort of make it up on the spot. You would follow like a very prescribed process. So like that's the way we sort of think about it.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. We're getting down probably to our last couple of questions here, and somebody's asked, we're seeing an appreciation of soft skills in leaders, so like empathy, like we talked about earlier, and compassion. I'd love to understand, how can the people function help ensure that the hires have these skills? That's a very good question. And do you want to tackle that one?
I can't say no. So how do I think it's a great question, and it's a difficult question to answer, but I think overall it's much like any other skill that we look to recruit for, is that you need to try and find evidence of it during the interview process. So how are they showing up? If you talk, if we're looking at compassion and empathy, if you bring up a subject, what are they talking about it? What's their body language, as much as you can see it if it's verbal. So how they're showing up throughout the interview, what problems they're talking about when they're talking about the problems that they've solved, asking people directly kind of questions that are related to when they haven't seen empathy or compassion shown and the impact, or when they have. It's really about kind of digging deep within those and trying to find evidence, like every other skill. Sorry, I think that's a pretty poor answer.
No, it's not at all, thank you. And we'll go for the final one here. How do you make sure that senior people can be integrated into the leadership team rather than behave as a support function? Which is a great question. Anyone want to go for that one?
I'm quite happy to take this one. I strongly believe that you should have a people team member, people person, partnering a business partner with every single function. So we also do this with other functions which are historically called support functions, like finance. There's a finance business partner to every single other like functional leader, or even like middle management people. So so like they're not a support function. Exactly the same thing for people. I have my own people person who's a partner to me. Lots of people reporting to me have their own people partners as business partners. And so there is a interwoven throughout the organization links between the people team and the rest of the functions within our business. that ensures that like it is not a support function, which is like that people go to after the event or when like a problem has occurred, as per Anouk's comment earlier. So like that's sort of how we do it with business pairing.
Thank you. Great. And I'm going to just ask a final quick question for myself, slightly selfish one, but when I started working in recruitment, I'll be honest, I was a different type of proposition, but I was a bit embarrassed to work in recruitment, very transactional, very corporate. It was just not me. And then I've seen over the years, the recruitment has evolved a lot. People and talent, there's so much opportunity, whether it's in-house, firms like ours, RPOs. It's an amazing time to work in people and talent. And as we've talked about today, the strategic value of the people function is becoming increasingly obvious and having a real impact. So I just wondered if, just for anyone listening to this that might be a COO currently, but actually thinking, actually, I want to do more people stuff, or anyone listening to this that is unsure about this as a career, would love just to get each and every one of your thoughts on just why it's a great role, and whether it's BC or in-house, and just any pointers for anyone that's thinking about going into that industry or that type of role.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a very exciting time to be in talent or people roles. And, from our perspective, we did a founder survey. We do a yearly survey where we asked our portfolio founders, what's the most impactful type of support that we can offer? And 70% said talent and people. So that just gives you, a flavor of, how impactful it can be, whether you're, an operator or a firm that's providing advice and leadership capabilities, whether you're a recruitment and search firm. I think any dimension you look at it, it can really move the needle, and we've seen it through this survey.
Awesome, that's great. Thank you so much to you all. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope everyone listening to this has really enjoyed it and taken a lot from it. I'll hand back to Marina to wrap up.
Yes, well, thank you all so much. It's been great to hear your insights, and thanks to our attendees for some great questions. I think we're really excited to be doing this fireside chats, and really excited for the next one, hopefully in person. I think another point we wanted to raise as a kind of a quick call to action. We have been talking about people and talent. We are also looking to grow ourselves. So we're looking to hire someone into the SOS team and the wider JBM team. So I just wanted to say that if you do come across any, rockstar recruiters or just some commercial people from Scaleups that you think might be a good culture add to JBM, then we'd be really grateful if you refer them to us, because we need good people to keep growing. Yeah,
love the plug, Maz. Thank you. And as Elena's just said, it is the best time possible to do this sort of role. So bring on the applications. Thank you, Marina, and thank you all again. I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. And just to reiterate what Marina said earlier, just from myself and the whole team, thank you so much for everyone's support of JBM and SOS in what has been a trying 18 months. We're really grateful for everyone's support, and we are always here for you in any way that we can help. So please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything we can do. And a massive thanks again to Anouk, Elena and Phill for your brilliant insights today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.